The street was alive with noise. Car horns, hurried footsteps, the chatter of people carrying shopping bags. Neon signs flickered across the cracked pavement. Yet, in one corner, the world seemed quieter. There sat a girl. Her coat was torn at the sleeves, her shoes mismatched and fraying at the edges. A battered guitar rested across her lap like a fragile treasure. She looked no older than 17, but her eyes carried the weight of winters too long and nights too cold. Her stomach growled softly, but she ignored it. She had learned to silence hunger. What she couldn't silence, though, was the fire inside her, an aching need to be heard. She raised her head as a group of men in crisp suits passed by, laughing loudly, carrying steaming cups of coffee. The smell hit her hard. Her voice cracked, but she spoke anyway. "Excuse me, can I play for food?" One of them stopped, staring at her like she had said something absurd. He chuckled, turning to his friends. "Play for food? Did you hear that? She wants to sing for a sandwich." His laughter echoed, sharp and cruel. The girl's cheeks burned. Her fingers tightened around the guitar's neck. She wanted to disappear. But then, a whisper inside her said, "Play. Show them who you are." Her hands trembled as she strummed the first chord. The sound was rough, imperfect. A few passers-by turned their heads. The men in suits smirked. "Go on, then," one sneered. "Entertain us." She closed her eyes, and then she began to sing. First, her voice was soft, almost fragile, but with each word, it grew stronger, carrying not just notes but pieces of her soul. "I walk these streets with nothing to my name, but dreams still burn beneath the flame." The crowd around her shifted. Some slowed down, their curiosity pulling them closer. A child tugged at his mother's hand. "Mama, she's singing." One of the suited men rolled his eyes, but his laughter had stopped. The melody had cut through the noise of the city like a knife through silence. Her voice rose again, raw with hunger, yet glowing with something deeper, hope. Every chord echoed against the cold brick walls. The mist seemed to thin, as if the night itself paused to listen. She sang of hunger, of nights under broken rooftops, of watching others eat while she curled on empty stomachs. She sang of loneliness, but also of a stubborn belief that life still held light. Her fingers moved faster, smoother. The trembling was gone. The guitar became an extension of her body, each note ringing with defiance. People gathered now. A delivery boy stopped his bike. A couple holding hands lingered, their smiles fading into awe. Even the men in suits, who had mocked her moments before, stood frozen. One whispered, "She's actually good." His friend nudged him, uneasy. "Better than good. This feels different." The homeless girl didn't look at them. Her eyes remained shut, her voice soaring higher. She was no longer a girl begging for food. In that moment, she was a storyteller, a survivor, a soul pouring itself into the night air. A little boy stepped forward and placed a half-eaten chocolate bar at her feet. She opened her eyes just enough to see it, and her lips curved into the faintest smile. Tears welled up, but she kept singing, louder now, stronger. The suited man shifted uncomfortably, his earlier laughter stuck in his throat. The song filled the street. The guitar strings hummed with life. And for the first time, people saw her, not as a beggar, not as a nuisance, but as a human being. Silent pause. The city noise seemed far away. Only her voice remained. But deep inside, she wondered, would they really listen, or would the moment pass like all the others? The crowd leaned closer, their eyes wide, but none of them knew. Her next words would bring more than music. They would bring tears. The last chord of her song lingered in the air, hanging heavy like smoke after a fire. For a moment, no one moved. Even the traffic lights flicking from green to red seemed to wait. The girl lowered her gaze, her fingers gently brushing the guitar strings as if they, too, were hungry. "See? Just noise," one of the suited men muttered, his voice breaking the silence. He forced a laugh, but it sounded hollow. His friends didn't join in this time. The girl swallowed. Her lips were dry, but she spoke again. "I don't ask for much. Just food. I'll keep playing if you'll listen. Her words were simple, but they cracked the crowd open. A woman carrying grocery bags paused. Her face softened, as though she had just remembered something painful. A teenager with earbuds hanging loose pulled out his phone, whispering, "Bro, she's amazing. Look at this." He pressed record. The girl took a deep breath and strummed again. This time, the melody was different. Slower, sadder. Each note fell like raindrops, delicate but impossible to ignore. Her voice rose, trembling at first, then steady, pouring out years of unspoken grief. "Every step I take is heavy. Every dream I hold is gone. But I'll sing until I'm empty, for a crumb to carry on." The lyrics sliced through the air. They weren't polished. They weren't pretty. But they were real. And real had a way of shaking people more than perfection ever could. The woman with the grocery bags stopped in her tracks. Slowly, she placed an apple on the pavement beside the girl. The child tugging at his mother's sleeve earlier leaned forward, placing his small candy bar closer to the guitar case. The girl's voice cracked mid-verse. For a second, her eyes filled with tears. She whispered, barely audible, "Thank you," and then she strummed harder. Her fingers moved with urgency, her knuckles whitening as if she was wringing the very last strength out of herself. A man in the crowd whispered, "Listen to her. Really listen." Silent pause. The kind of pause where even footsteps on the pavement seemed disrespectful. The girl's song was no longer background noise. It was the heartbeat of the street. The men in suits exchanged glances. One shifted uncomfortably, tugging at his tie. "She's still just begging," he muttered. But even as he said it, his voice faltered, because something had changed. Her song wasn't about begging anymore. It was defiance. It was hunger turned into music, pain turned into power. The lyrics rolled out like waves. "Mock me, break me, call me less. Still I'll sing, my voice confess. I am more than what you see. Hunger won't define me." A teenager in the front lowered his phone, his face suddenly serious. The smirk had left his lips. "Man, that hit different." A woman dabbed her eyes with a tissue. A delivery boy leaned against his bike, shaking his head in disbelief. "She's not just playing for food," he murmured. "She's playing for life." The crowd grew larger. Dozens stood now, shoulder to shoulder, their eyes fixed on the fragile girl who had been invisible moments before. And in that crowd, something shifted, hearts softening, defenses breaking. People weren't just seeing a homeless girl. They were seeing themselves. Every struggle, every loss, every moment they felt voiceless. Her song had given them a mirror. The last verse faded, her voice dropping into a whisper. "And if tonight my song must end, at least I sang. I did not bend." The guitar string buzzed softly. Silence followed. A silence that carried weight. Then a clap. Just one. Then another. And soon the street was filled with applause. The girl's hands shook. She looked down at the apple, the candy bar, the coins that had begun to fill her case. And for the first time in days, maybe weeks, she smiled. But as the clapping echoed, a new sound pierced the night. A mocking voice from the back of the crowd. "Sing louder. Maybe McDonald's will give you fries." The laughter of a few teenagers followed. The girl froze, her smile fading. Would she break under the cruelty? Or would her next song silence even the mockers? The laughter stung sharper than the cold wind that cut through the street. The homeless girl froze, her hands hovering above the strings. The cruel voice echoed again. "Play louder. Maybe you'll earn a happy meal." A few more snickers followed. The crowd's applause faltered. People shifted uncomfortably. Some looked at the boys who had jeered, their faces hard with disapproval. The girl's chest rose and fell, her breath shaky. For a moment it looked like she might stop. Her guitar tilted forward, as if she wanted to put it away, hide her voice, and retreat back into the shadows where no one could laugh at her. But then something shifted in her eyes. She gripped the guitar tighter. The trembling in her fingers turned into a steady grip. She raised her chin, locking eyes with the teenagers. Her gaze wasn't angry. It wasn't pleading. It was something far more piercing. Empty, tired, yet unbroken. The laughter quieted. Unease crept into the air. And then she played. This time her strum was firm, powerful. The sound cracked through the silence like thunder. Her voice followed, rising strong, carrying a weight that none could ignore. Mock me, break me, call me less. Still I'll sing, my soul confess. I am more than what you see. Your words will never silence me. The mocking boys fell silent. One of them lowered his phone, his smirk gone. He shifted his weight awkwardly, staring at the ground. The crowd leaned in. Their earlier unease was replaced by awe. People weren't just watching a girl play for food anymore. They were watching a battle between cruelty and courage. Her fingers danced across the strings with a rhythm so fierce it was as though every insult she had endured, every night she had gone hungry, was being thrown back out into the world as music. The lyrics poured out, raw and defiant. You laugh while I am on the ground, but one day truth will turn around. The heart you mock is still alive. Through song, through pain, I will survive. Tears streaked the face of a woman in the crowd. A man whispered to his friend, "She's fighting back with her voice. Do you see it?" The boy who had shouted earlier rubbed the back of his neck. His laughter had died completely. He whispered, almost to himself, "I didn't think," but his words trailed off. The girl's voice carried higher, breaking into cracks of pain, but she didn't falter. The guitar vibrated under her hands, as if it, too, was tired of being silenced. The suited men who had mocked her earlier now stood in silence. One of them shifted, his jaw tight, as though her voice had reached into a place he had buried long ago. And then something remarkable happened. The crowd began to hum along, softly at first, then stronger. Strangers who had never spoken to each other were united by a song born of hunger and resilience. The mocking teenagers looked around, realizing they were alone in their cruelty. Their bravado crumbled under the weight of dozens of disapproving stares. The girl opened her eyes briefly, scanning the crowd. For the first time she saw not just pity, but respect. She sang louder, her final verse hitting like a hammer against stone. You tried to break my song apart, but music grows inside the heart. So mock me more, I will not fall. My song will rise above it all. The final chord rang out, vibrating in the cold air. Silence followed, thick, heavy, sacred. And then, the street erupted in applause, louder than before, stronger. Some people whistled, others cheered. A woman stepped forward and placed a sandwich into her guitar case. A man dropped a folded bill without a word. But the girl didn't reach for them. She sat still, her chest heaving, her eyes shining with unshed tears. And in the back, the teenagers slipped away quietly, their laughter silenced. Not by anger, not by force, but by the truth of a voice they could not mock anymore. Yet as the applause echoed, a shadow moved through the crowd. An older man who seemed shaken, his eyes locked on the girl's face, as if he had seen her before. Who was he? The applause rolled through the street like thunder. Strangers clapped, cheered, even shouted words of encouragement. The girl bowed her head, her lips trembling into a small, disbelieving smile. For a moment, warmth replaced hunger. For a moment, she felt seen. But as the sound faded, she noticed him. An older man stood at the edge of the crowd. His coat was long, his shoulders slightly hunched, but his presence was unmistakable. His eyes were locked on her, not with the detached curiosity of strangers, but with something deeper, something that made her chest tighten. He took a step forward, then another. The crowd parted without a word, as though they could sense something important was about to happen. The girl swallowed, gripping her guitar like a shield. The man's voice cracked as he spoke. That song, where did you learn it? Her breath caught. She hesitated, her fingers brushing against the strings as if searching for courage. My mother. She used to sing it to me, every night before I slept. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A few exchanged glances, whispering. The man's face paled. His lips trembled. Your mother. He took another step closer, his eyes glistening. What was her name? The girl blinked, her throat tightening. Clara, she whispered. The man's knees buckled slightly. He reached out as if trying to steady himself on air. Clara, his voice broke on the name. Clara was my daughter. The crowd froze. Silence fell heavy. The kind of silence that even the city's noise couldn't penetrate. The girl's eyes widened. She shook her head in disbelief. No, that's not possible. But the man nodded desperately, his face lined with sorrow and hope. It is. Clara ran away years ago. She was all I had. And I searched, God knows I searched. I never found her. His hand trembled as he pressed it to his chest. And now you're here. The guitar slipped slightly in the girl's lap. Tears burned her eyes. She wanted to believe him. But after years of hunger, of loneliness, of cruel laughter, hope was dangerous. Why should I trust you? She whispered, her voice cracking. The man's shoulders shook. His eyes filled with tears that spilled freely down his cheeks. Because when you sang, I heard her. Clara's voice. She used to hum that exact melody in our kitchen, when she was still just a girl. And now you carry it. You carry her. The crowd was silent, their eyes darting between the old man and the fragile girl. Some covered their mouths. Others held their breath. The girl pressed her lips together, trembling. You're saying? You're my grandfather? The man nodded, almost collapsing to his knees. Yes. My God, yes. The world seemed to tilt around her. The cold pavement beneath her suddenly felt unsteady. She shook her head, tears falling fast. I don't know. I don't know what to believe. The man moved closer, slowly, carefully, as though afraid to scare her away. Believe this, he whispered. You're not alone anymore. Silent pause, the kind that presses on every chest, demanding stillness. The crowd wasn't just watching a street performance anymore. They were witnesses to a reunion carved from pain and chance. The girl clutched her guitar tighter, her tears dripping onto the worn wood. For years she had begged, played, sung for scraps of food. And now, a man who claimed to be family stood before her, eyes shining with recognition and love. Her voice wavered, almost breaking. If you're really who you say you are, why now? Why here? The man's lips parted. He drew in a trembling breath, preparing to answer. The crowd leaned forward, waiting, as his next words threatened to change everything she thought she knew about her past. The street was silent. The crowd leaned in as the old man struggled to steady his breath. His voice came out broken, trembling like a confession years overdue. Why here? Why now? He repeated, his eyes locked on the girl. Because I never stopped looking. Clara, your mother, she left home when she was barely older than you. She was angry, lost, chasing dreams bigger than her small town could hold. And when she left, she cut all ties. I thought I'd lost her forever. The girl's chest heaved. She wanted to run, yet her feet felt nailed to the ground. You say she's your daughter, my mother. Then, where is she now? The man's face crumpled, grief flooding his features. She's gone. His voice cracked, shattering like glass. She died years ago, but before she passed, she wrote me one letter. Just one. She said she had a child. A little girl with her same eyes. A girl she prayed would carry her music. I searched every shelter, every city corner. But I was too late. Tears blurred the girl's vision. The guitar felt heavier in her lap. All these years, she whispered, I thought I had no one, no family, nothing but this guitar. Her fingers tapped gently against the scratched wood. It was hers, wasn't it? My mother's. The man nodded, his lips trembling. Yes, that guitar was hers. I gave it to her when she was 16. His eyes watered as he stared at the instrument, worn yet unbroken. And now it's yours. It's always been yours. The crowd's collective gasp rippled like a wave. Some wiped their eyes. A mother hugged her child tighter. A teenager who had mocked earlier now stood with his head bowed, ashamed. The girl's tears fell freely. Her voice trembled. Why? Why did I have to suffer so long? Why did no one see me? The man stepped forward, his hands shaking as he reached out. Not forcing, just offering. Sometimes the world is cruel. Sometimes it blinds itself to pain. But I see you. I see Clara's child. And if you let me, I will never let you be hungry or alone again. Silent moment. The air was heavy, charged with emotion. The girl stared at his outstretched hand, her breath uneven. Years of hunger, nights under bridges, days of mockery. All clashed with this sudden spark of belonging. Could she trust it? Could she risk believing in family again? The crowd held their breath, waiting. Finally, with trembling fingers, she set the guitar gently on the ground. Then, slowly, she placed her small, calloused hand into his. Gasps and sobs erupted around them. Some clapped, not in applause this time, but in celebration. Others wiped their eyes, overwhelmed by the moment. The old man pulled her into his arms. She stiffened at first, then collapsed against him, her tears soaking into his coat. "I've got you," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I've got you now." The girl wept, clutching him as though afraid he might vanish like every other fragile hope she'd ever had. For the first time in years, she felt the warmth of home. Not a roof, not walls, but arms that held her like she mattered. The crowd began to disperse, but their faces carried something different now. No one saw her as a beggar anymore. They had witnessed transformation. Mockery turned into music, loneliness turned into reunion. The suited man who had laughed earlier lingered at the edge, guilt carved into his features. He turned away quietly, his arrogance drowned by shame. The girl lifted her head, her eyes swollen with tears, but her voice firm. "I played for food tonight, but I found something else." The old man smiled, pressing his forehead to hers. "You found your family. You found your voice." Silent pause. The night air seemed softer now, the street lighter, as though the music had changed everything. The girl picked up her guitar, hugging it to her chest. This time, when her fingers touched the strings, she wasn't playing for food. She was playing for memory, for love, for a future she thought she'd never have. The first note rang out, a promise that her voice would never be silenced again. If you had passed by that night, would you have mocked her, or stopped to listen?